Good morning and welcome back to Morning Meditations with the Brilliance Co. and me, Dawn. I hope that the last couple mornings have been at the very least refreshing for you. This is an adventure, learning how to meditate on scripture. Sometimes we don't always feel like we're doing it right, but just trust me, hang in there a little bit longer with me, and I trust you'll see some beautiful results. So without further ado, let's hop right back in where we left off. At verse 3 of Psalm 139, it says, "You search out my path, and you know my lying down, and are acquainted with all of my ways." You search out my path, and you know my lying down, and are acquainted with all of my ways. You search out my path and my lying down. You are acquainted with all of my ways. You search out my path and my lying down. You are acquainted with all of my ways. You search out my path and my lying down. You are acquainted with all of my ways. In verse 1, when David talks about God knowing him, he uses the word hagar, which means to search or to seek. It's more relational. It has to do with David feeling like God is pursuing him on a very intimate level, almost like a lover pursues his beloved. In this verse, the word search is the word zarah. And this word means to measure or to scrutinize. This is another take on the idea of searching. It's more analytical and less emotional than hagar. Both words essentially mean to search, but they are different angles on searching. The first, obviously, again, more intimate, relational and emotional, and this one is more logical and calculated and analytical. And then when we hit the word acquainted, the word here is kakan, which means to be useful or beneficial through familiarity. This is really cool to me because basically David is saying that God is not just familiar with him or with us, but familiar in such a way that is meant to be useful or beneficial to us. This should put our hearts at ease when we start to feel a little like iffy about the idea of being scrutinized or searched out. David here is making a clear statement that God's searching of us is with good intent, that it is meant to be useful to us and beneficial. So instead of being fearful of it or a little timid, what we want to do is embrace it. We want to think about how it would help us to know that we have someone who is looking at every part of who we are and watching out for us, that wants to be a benefit to us. In the cultural context, the word kakana actually has a relational aspect to it. This being useful and beneficial is not meant to be a mere individualistic support, but in its original language, it implies being useful in a way where mutual benefit and community happens. When I read this verse, I see that our God is the ultimate map maker. He knows the best routes, the best paths for us. He is familiar with us in a way that is not meant to be manipulative or controlling, the way that most human beings use that kind of familiarity. But instead, he uses all of his knowledge of us, the most intimate details that we are not even familiar with, to benefit us, to be of use to us, to help us. So I want to challenge you today to try acknowledging him as your true guide, not just, oh, be my guide, but actually think about him as your guide. The same way that when you hop in your car to go on a trip, you have to put in your coordinates or your address, and your GPS has to take you there. You are looking constantly to your GPS. I encourage you to do the same with God today. Acknowledge him along the paths of your day and see what you notice that maybe you didn't notice before. It reminds me of that commonly quoted passage from Proverbs 3:6 that says, "In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." Take a little time to think about that today. You search out my path and know my lying down. You are acquainted with all of my ways. Have a super blessed day, guys.